Hello, thank you for joining us for the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting today. It is September 14th, 2020. The first thing we do at every meeting is stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. If you have a flag in your room, aim towards that. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right. So our next step is to have roll call.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Harlow?
Yes.
Mr. Havel? Mr. Havel?
He was on.
I see him.
Not muted.
He might be muted because I see a picture of him.
Okay.
No,
Mr. Horvath?
Here.
Mr. Wolf?
Here.
Darcy, can you say something? You can hear us, right? Your microphone is not working. You're not muted and your mic is broken or not working somehow.
I mean, I can't even see him, so.
He's his video is working. His microphone was something's wrong with it.
Ralph, you should have little blue buttons near the pictures where you can scroll and see other people in our group.
Oh, there they are. Up there, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay, I see him. Hi, Darcy.
Yeah, it's still not working.
We can't hear you, but that's okay.
Just not a lot.
We're ready?
Well, I think Darcy's trying to get his microphone to work. No, still can't hear you.
Maybe you should go out and come back in.
He had this problem last time, didn't he?
I don't remember. I didn't think so. Not this long anyway.
Yeah.
Well, he's trying, but it's still not working. Well, so if we can't hear him, he can't vote, but we can go on with the meeting. If he gets it fixed by the time we're voting, then he can vote.
Thumbs up. He can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Well, he tried to disconnect. Maybe he'll come back. Yeah, I think we can go on though.
Is that going? Okay. Approval of agenda for tonight.
So approved.
Well, you
Second.
did a motion in a second, I think.
Second.
So that was moved by Mr. Wolf and seconded by Mr. Horvath. Not Horvath, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'll second it. That's good.
Go with
Works.
Horvath.
The real Jack.
Yeah, it real works.
All right. Those of you who are attending this meeting and are going to speak, you will be testifying. Please raise your right hand and say, I swear to tell the truth. We will take you on your word for that. Our first case that we will be hearing is BZA number 2020-09. And this is in relation to 10,033 Fields Erdel Road. Mr. Snyder.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Not that I have a lot of graphics to show on it, but I'm gonna try to share my screen. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so this is the property here. It is, like you said, 10033 Fields Erdel Road. This is a request for a variance for a detached accessory structure that is larger than permitted in an A residence district. This is the property is zoned A. It's surrounded by A zoning on these three sides, and then there's Warren County across the street. I believe it's also single family zoning over there. The the request is to put a 2,560 square foot pole barn in the rear of the property, I believe somewhere in this area here. And the zoning resolution allows for properties over 1 acre to have up to 2,000 square feet in a detached accessory structure. And the setbacks are required to be 25 feet from the property line and a maximum height of 24 feet. The proposed pole barn would exceed that by 560 square feet. So that's the variance that's being requested, a 560 square foot variance for a larger than permitted pole barn. I don't believe that we have elevations of the building, so we're not sure how tall it is. If it is going to be taller than 24 feet, the applicant needs to indicate that, because that would require a variance as well. If approved as submitted without the elevations, the height would be a maximum of 24 feet. The structure would not be visible to the residents across the street or really to anybody on Fields Erdel. It would be behind the houses. And so it wouldn't have any negative impact on the general public driving by on Fields Erdel or the people across the street, really. The most impacted properties would obviously be the ones on either side. You can see the properties to the south have significant vegetation between them and this property. It's not likely that it would have any impact on these properties here. But these two on either side would obviously be able to see it. There's not a lot of vegetation on the property line, some trees, but it doesn't look like any thick vegetation that would screen something like that. 560 square feet out of a 2,000 square foot structure is not extremely noticeable. A 2,000 square foot structure is pretty big, and that's what the zoning resolution already permits. But it is bigger, and you probably would notice it. If it was approved, if there was a concern about the view of it from the adjacent properties, the board has the authority to require landscaping to kind of screen the size of the structure from the neighbors. But again, a 2,000 square foot garage is permitted to be located exactly where they're proposing it. There's no restrictions on where driveways can go across properties in the zoning resolution. So however they want to get back there with the driveway is permitted by the zoning resolution. The only point of discussion is the 560 square feet of additional size for the structure. So that's all I have. I do have take that back. Sorry. I have some pictures of the property. You've got these in your staff report. This is a copy of the staff report actually. So you've seen these pictures, but this is looking into the rear yard. So you can see what I was saying. There are trees, but there's not a lot of low foliage or dense vegetation along the property lines. And then just a couple of other pictures of the rear of the property from across the street, I think. And then this is the front of the home, what it looks like currently. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Brian, I have a question. Is there another accessory structure on the property? Because it looks like there's one in the corner.
Yes, there's probably, it looks like there's a shed. I'm not sure if it's still there. The aerial photo is not, you know, very recent. It's within the last year, I believe. There's not a restriction on the number of accessory structures either in the zoning code. So we didn't look into that.
Okay, so it's not an accumulative amount of square footage. It's just per building.
Correct. That's a good point. They could build a 2,000 square foot garage and a 1,000 square foot garage right next to each other.
Okay.
And not need a variance.
Okay.
So is it a 2-car garage?
I believe it's going to, at that size, it would be much larger than 2 cars. Like I said, we don't have elevations, but it looks like this based on where the garage doors are being proposed.
Yeah.
Sorry, my graphics.
Right.
You know, there's a man door and a garage door, so I'm guessing that this is mostly workshop space,
right,
or storage.
And how many car garage does the house have as is?
It looks like 2.
Yeah.
But I'm not positive. I can go back up and look at the photos, see if you can figure that out. Well, 1 car garage, I guess, or no car garage. I'm not sure if there's a garage.
Well,
back
at least one. It looks like 1 behind that panel truck.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
I thought that was a trailer.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not sure. It doesn't look exactly like a garage at all. The applicant will probably answer that, I'm sure.
Right.
So Brian, the only issue that we have to deal with is the purpose of its use is not our business. It's the size. It's the 560 square feet, and potentially, or reinforcing the point that it can't be more than 24 feet high. It looks like the setbacks from the property lines per your drawing are fine. So is that really the issue, just the additional 560 and the potential height?
Yes, that's it. That's all there is.
Okay. All right. Good.
Does anyone else have questions for Brian? No? Okay.
No.
So at this point, we would like to hear from the attendees as to,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, from the applicant, from the attendee list. I believe you're right there.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to lower everybody's hands again. And whoever the owner of the property is that's here on behalf of the applicant, the owner of the property. Is there anybody here representing the owner? Okay, I'm going to assume that it's Bruce.
That matches.
Gross.
Okay, so Mr. Grossclose, you have the floor.
Good evening. I'm the property owner. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
We can.
Just wanted to say what I'm thinking about. The height on the plans that we submitted is 22 feet 5 1/4 inches at the peak. The wall height is 16 foot at the eave. So it is under the 24-foot height.
And we measure the height at the midpoint between the eave and the peak, so it's less than that. It'd probably be somewhere like 19 feet.
Yeah, something like that. So it's something between 16 and 22. So it's under 24 in any case. The reason for the height and the size is I have an RV trailer I want to park on my property, and I'd like to park it inside. It's a 32-foot trailer, so I need plus the tongue length. So that's kind of the reasoning for the sizes. And then the other half of the garage is a workshop area. Yes. It's going to be it's a steel corrugated pole barn. Believe it's going to be dark red with black piping. So it's not going to be an unpleasant sight. I get along pretty well with my neighbors. I hadn't heard anybody say any problems or any complaints. Any questions I can answer?
Is there any reason why 2,000 square feet would not meet your needs?
I'm just using the space available, the size of the trailer. I have 2 trailers. One's the 32-footer, and the width of it to park it and back it into there. And then the second trailer is the smaller one that you see in the driveway. I want to get it out of my driveway, get it off of the face of the property also. So the two trailers side by side to end up taking up about 30 foot of width, with room to back it into the garage area, into the space.
So are you saying that the intent that you have to use exceeds the 2,000? That's why you're asking for the variance?
Yes, sir. Because of the sizing, it's just the sizing is what fit the property and what I want to use it for, storage of two trailers. Am I unmute?
No, we hear you.
Unmuted.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, the two trailers and then enough workspace area next to it to do some projects and stuff. I just moved into the area about 8 months ago. I'm looking for my retirement work. You did have a question about how many parking spaces was in the home. It is a 2-car garage in the home. But the height of the garage won't allow either of the trailers to fit into it.
Okay.
Any questions or anything else I can answer?
I have just one. What color will it be?
It's either going to be a dark fire brick red with black piping or a dark forest green with black piping.
Thank you.
So just for the board's information, a 40-foot by 50-foot structure is 2,000 square feet. He's asking for a 40-foot by 64 feet, so an extra 14 feet of width.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Does the board have any other questions for Mr. Grossclass?
No?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna mute you again, and the board will be able to ask you to come back if they have any other questions. And let's see.
What else speak for?
So Drew, I've got a question for you before we get into the rest of the people here, if you're still listening.
Yeah, what's it?
So I've muted Mr. Grossclose, the guy that was just speaking, but I don't have the option to remove him from the panel.
Um,
Can I put him, see if I remove him, I don't want to remove him from the meeting. I have that option.
right. I think there's a change role to attendee
Yeah, I'm
option.
not seeing that. Oh,
Really?
disable talking. Got it.
That'll do it. Okay.
Found it, thanks. Okay, so Madam Chairman, it's on you.
Yes.
We've heard from the applicant.
All right, we have heard from the applicant. Those who are here to speak for the motion, please raise your hand.
That would be people in favor of this.
Yes, those who are supporting Mr. Grossclose.
Okay, I do not see any hands raised.
I do not see any either. So now we're going to ask for those who are opposed to this motion. That means if you are against the building of the large barn, please raise your hand. We have people raising their hands. Brian's going to take you in order.
Yes, so we'll go with David Nicamp first.
Great.
And Mr. Nicamp, you have to unmute yourself if you would like to speak to the board.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay, yes, this is David DeCamp. I'm at the Sadler Circle subdivision. And based on everything I've heard and read up to this point, I'm just opposed to the variance in the zoning at this time.
Okay.
And where are you located in reference to the property?
I'm at 9960 Sadler Circle at the entrance of Sadler Circle subdivision.
So that's none of the houses that are directly adjacent to it that are on the screen, but
No,
it's in this subdivision.
I just have concerns as to what the ultimate use of the building would be. Concerns me about the workshop. I'm concerned about possible business activity there, concerned about drainage into our subdivision area. There's several factors that just make us opposed at this particular point. And I'm sure you'll find that there's some solidarity there amongst all of our residents.
Okay, Mr. DeCamp, could you just tell me, like, what are your top 1 and 2 objections to this request, please?
My top objection would be probably, I would say, drainage and those sort of things back into our subdivision. We've had issues before from other development in the area that's rerouted drainage and caused some drainage problems in our area. My secondary thing would be a visual thing. The way I understand it is that barn would be bigger than the fellow's house. And I'm just concerned about what the ultimate use of that building would be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. DeCamp? No? Thank you, Mr. DeCamp. We are going to move down the line to Braxton Smith. Is who I see next in line. Please unmute yourself. Go ahead.
So we're calling on Braxton Smith. You're able to speak now? They don't have a microphone either. They are unmuted. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Braxton Smith. Okay, we might be able to come back to them later.
So next we will have Tracy Tent speak. There we go. You can unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I am at 10,005, so I'm 2 doors down. And like the last person that spoke, this barn is quite a bit bigger than his entire house, including his garage. And I know there's a 2,000 square foot that you'll allow, but from my property, this is going to be a huge eyesore. This takes up most of his backyard. I know it's toward the woods, but I have a direct, from any window in my house, I'm going to be looking directly at it. And an acre to have a barn that size. I currently have a shed in my yard. This shed he wants to build is 5.3 times the size of the shed in my backyard. And I can fit a single car in there, or 4 recreational vehicles like quads. It's a big, I consider my shed to be pretty big, but this shed that's huge. And it's just going to be from a standpoint of my property value. I don't think anybody wants to move here and look at a barn that size.
Okay. Ms. Tent, can you tell us, are you one of the properties that are adjacent
I do
to
have
this?
Yes,
Oh.
I'm the, if you're facing his property, I am 2 houses to the right.
Okay, thank you.
And like I said, you can look out my back window and I can see that tiny shed that's currently in his yard, but this is going to be like his whole entire backyard. And especially green or bright red. I have a barn. I own some property out in Morrow, and I have a barn that exact size, and it's huge.
Is this the house with the pool in the back?
Here.
I think this is her house.
Okay.
If you can all see that.
This barn is 5 times the size of my shed. I mean, mine's 400.
So it sounds like we're losing Miss Trent.
Yes, it looks like we lost her.
Okay. Oh, yeah, she's gone.
Okay.
Brian, how wide are these properties?
They are 128 feet wide by 340 feet deep.
So that's, okay, so the width is like a normal sized or average sized lot in a typical subdivision.
The typical size for an A lot, the minimum required is 100 feet. So a lot of the subdivisions lots are 100 feet because they like to max the number when they put them in. So it's 28 feet larger than the minimum width, 28 feet wider than the minimum width.
Okay. So it's not unreasonable that Mrs. Tent looking or in her backyard is going to see this, because this is, it's just roughly 128 feet from her in between neighbor and wherever she stands in her property. So this thing is going to be visible to her.
Yeah, it'll be 150 something feet away. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like looking through your neighbor's yard. It's there.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Brian, she logged back on.
Say again?
Tracy Tent, she logged back on.
She did. She's logged in a couple of times down there. So we can, she wants to talk again. There's the 3 of them on there. All right. So, yeah.
Ms.
Sorry.
Tent, we have you back.
Yeah, I was just losing connection, so we were trying another device. Sorry, I'm logged in there.
Okay.
But I don't know how much of that you heard, but that is literally 5.3 times the shed in my backyard.
Okay.
Which is, that's going to be huge. And yeah, I heard what you guys said about how, you know, if I walk out in my backyard, you'll be able to see it from anywhere at my house. It's just going to be huge. I know it's hard to imagine how big a barn that size is, but I don't know if you heard me or not, but we have property in Morrow and I have a barn exactly that size, and it's huge. I can't imagine someone wanting to put it on a 1 acre lot. I'm sure it's going to hurt my property value. You know, having a shed 500 or 480 square feet seems reasonable. I do have a question though. Do you guys, you don't require, obviously he said it's going to be like a pole barn made of metal. We don't have any say in what materials he uses either, do we?
Residents don't, the board does.
Right. Do you limit that to something other than, because
the board has in the past and they've not in the past.
An industrial park versus, you know, I have a wood barn. All my neighbors have wood barns, except for the one, I think that was blown away by the tornado and got rebuilt.
Okay.
All right, what do the regulations stipulate? Do the regulations stipulate any type of building material?
No, they do not.
Okay.
Ms. Tent, do you have anything else you would like for us to consider?
No, I mean, it's the size of it. I do. And then I do have one more question. We all have leach lines over here. So how is he going to drive vehicles that size through a leach bed into a barn? I mean, I know that's not something you have say over, but I'm just wondering how he gets away with not driving over his leach beds.
So he'll have to answer for that when he gets a building permit for the building. He'll have to show where he's going through, and all the review agencies at the county will have to sign off. That's actually the same for stormwater for all the people who live in the Sadler Circle subdivision. There is a stormwater review for the building permit, just like there will be, you know, a review of the driveway when it goes back when it's getting a building permit. There's not a limitation on the driveway, but you're right. They'll have to take some precautions to not crush the leach field.
Okay. Anything further, Ms. Tent?
for 21 years, and I just can't imagine someone wanting to put a barn that size in their backyard in Loveland, Ohio. It just seems, this isn't the country. I mean, no offense to anybody, but I just don't think it's the place for it. Not that size.
Okay.
All right. Ready to
Thank
move
you,
on?
Ms. Tim. Yes. We'll go to Ginger Kubala. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hello, Ginger Kubala, you are on.
Is it Kubala, maybe?
Kubala, yeah.
Maybe she's not able to speak either. Okay.
Okay, Ginger Kubala, we cannot hear you. We are going to go down the list. Oh.
All right, so Randy and Melissa Sadler.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
I'm getting a little feedback. See if
Yes.
I can change that. Still there?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, Ginger Kabbalah is my sister. I know she's trying to get on, but the system's a little kludgy. And I know when you're asking, does anybody else have any other questions? I think you're talking about you guys, right?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I live on Sadler Circle, Randy and Melissa Sadler. And I also own the property 10065 Fields Erdel. I just bought that property a couple months ago. One of the reasons I bought it was I was worried how they would develop the property. And lo and behold, I get this variance request for a 2,500 red or green pole barn. I'm opposed to the variance. I'm opposed to the pole barn. I'm opposed to any kind of structure like that. As far as our new neighbor moving in, not getting any complaints, he hasn't been there very long, but we've had problems with those properties back there. Mrs. Tennant, I think it was talking about the leach lines or the mound system back there. So we've had problems, not recently, but in the past with sewage coming from those into our backyards. Dr. Kabbalah has the two lots that are immediately adjacent to that property. My Fields Earl is one house removed from that. And just so all you guys know, as far as looking in Sadler Circle and looking over to the properties there on Fields Earl, in the winter, you can see all the way across Fields Earl to those other houses. Even now with all the vegetation, and it's pretty much at a peak right now, we can still see their houses from where I live, and I'm 2 lots over from Dr. Kabbalah, and I own the empty lot there. So it is a visual issue. I guess if the only thing we can complain about right now is the extra 500 and some feet, I'm doing that. If I get to complain about the color, I sure don't want a great big red monster there that I'm looking at. If we get to complain about the materials used, for God's sake, at least let him match his house and make it look like it's a residential property. On the property that I just bought, the 1065, there's a drainage problem on that right now. Part of it, I think, may be a county imposed problem, but the rest of it just is the 1065 in my lot, all the way in Sadler Circle, happen to be the low spots of that area. And so I'm planning on doing something to help the drainage out from our yards with that lot. And one of the reasons I bought the 5 acres there. In addition, I've got my architect with me tonight, just listening to all this, looking for what we can do to the 5 acres I just bought to make it more appealing, whether it's, just regrading it and planting a better grass, or whether it's adding some residential properties back there. But certainly a 2,500 square foot barn, in his opinion, he's been doing this all his life, will reduce the value of everybody around there in some way, shape, or form. That said, I would at least like to applaud my neighbor for if he's going to have some great big trailers, so to speak, there, or motorhomes, wherever they are. At least he's trying to hide them and not leave them sitting out in the driveway. So I think that's a good thing. I'd like to see him come up with a better idea how to accomplish whatever he is. We sure don't wish him ill will.
Hey, Brian, just for a second, could you help Mr. Sadler orient us on the diagram in terms of his properties relative to the subject house, please?
Only if they show up on the map that I have. So I'll pull that up. I'm not sure where he said he was. I don't know where the doctor lives.
Yeah, so if you can see the two lots that it abuts to, those are Dr. Kabbalah's lots. So her house is on the one to the right, and the one to the left is a lot that she can develop or sell later on, and she bought that for that purpose.
Sure, which one is
the first property on Fields Erdel is the one to the right. It's the long lot there. It's some 1,000 feet long. I think it's 200 feet wide or something like that. And there's a house on it. Nobody's lived in that house for 5 years. Like I said, it was Mrs. Muth that lived there before, but she'd been in a nursing home, passed away last year or early this year. And I bought the property not too long ago. Then if you go down again past Dr. Kabbalah's lots, he's got his pointer on my vacant lot right now. And then if you go down one more, you'll see my house. It's on a panhandle lot.
Yeah, so it's back here behind this. I don't have that.
Correct. And from that lot where I am at, I can see the cars and I can see the houses on Fields Erdel. They're a little bit more blurred with the vegetation that you guys have talked about. But and then in the winter, I mean, you can tell what color is the car. And that's nothing you can do about that. It's just that you can see through there. It's very, very flat.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful, because when you were saying you were seeing Fields Erdel, I didn't know your frame of reference. That's a pretty good distance that you're looking through.
Yep, that's correct. Just the point was you can't build a couple trees and not see it. Now, if he puts a big pole barn up, I won't be able to see the road again anymore. I'll be seeing the red pole barn.
Right. All right, does anyone else have questions for Mr. Sadler?
I will say that we did send in, our lawyer concocted a list of items and sent that in for the Sadler Circle subdivision to hopefully give you an idea of our concerns.
Okay.
Your attorney, Robert Settle?
Correct.
He's next on the list.
Okay. He's smarter than I am.
Okay. Mr. Sadler, thank you for your time, and we'll take your opinions under consideration. We're going to keep going through the list here. Brian, we have Mr. Settle, you said?
I believe so. Oops. Okay, there we go. All right, Mr. Settle, if you unmute yourself, you are able to speak.
Great. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you. I want to apologize first. I came late to the meeting. I don't know whether Randy told you this or Dr. Kabbalah, my wife recently had her leg amputated in the last 4 weeks, and she's just gotten into chemo. And I had a little bit of a problem this evening. But thank you for listening to this. My letter really speaks for itself. It goes through a number of points, and I don't know whether any of these have been argued before. Probably the most important one is the stormwater problem up in that area. I don't know whether the board is familiar with this part of the township. I'm sure they probably are, but it is flat. It has consistently had water problems. It's where the glaciers kind of ended in that one spot and left flat areas of Warren County. It's called basically the Warren County building department people, and call it crawdad territory. A barn of this size is up in the commercial size type of building. And this particular one is, I calculated out to be 136% the size of the applicant's property, residence itself, as far as the square footage is concerned. It basically would be a commercial structure smack dab in the middle of a Class A residential structure. It just really doesn't fit with the rest of the neighborhood, particularly my clients that are in the Sadler subdivision. And Randy, of course, has founded that subdivision, and he's the one who was just speaking, and also owns the lot over on Fields Erdel Road. If you go through the staff reports questions, basically the answer to all those would, say and tell you that the variance should be turned down. There's just no reason to have a commercial building of this size up against the back of the applicant's property. If it is to be located, it should be conforming to the square footage. It should also, even if it's a smaller consideration by the building department, should be that there probably should be a retention pond there. I think has Larry Norris spoken yet?
No.
No, I think he's going to go into the retention pond.
Okay. So, Mr. Settle, I appreciate that a lot of this has it's been a little bumpy here, but what is before us is he is permitted currently, the landowner is currently permitted by the zoning code to build this structure up to 2,000 square feet. And the issue that's before us tonight is an additional 560 square feet. I believe I'm saying that correctly.
Yes.
As far as size. That's all that is before the board. I think maybe Mr. Snyder can speak to some of the stormwater issues. I think he was speaking to that before regarding building permits and some of those issues.
I do realize that.
Okay.
It is a big building. It would probably conform to the code if it was smaller and didn't exceed the height requirement, but it doesn't. And
it doesn't exceed the height requirement. It's just the size.
It's just the size, and I understand that. But it's also an issue, as quite frankly, as to where it's placed on there, regardless of the setback. A building of this size that's not residential looking just doesn't have a place with this, particularly with it being oversized. I'll reiterate everything that's in my letter. I don't want to read through the thing, but the letter speaks for itself.
Okay. Luann, do we have copies of that letter? I don't believe I received a copy.
No, I just got it this morning. I didn't forward it to you guys. I'm sorry. He told me he was coming to the meeting and speaking to you. So
Okay.
I said I was coming to the meeting via Zoom. I registered to come.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Usually they don't accept letters or they want to speak to you in person, just so it's part of the record.
And that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that. Is there any other points that you would like to have on the record at this point?
Well, I assume that the letter will become part of the record.
All right. Are you speaking as an attorney or are you speaking as a resident?
I'm speaking as an attorney. I don't live on Sadler Circle.
Okay.
I'm the attorney for the Sadler Circle subdivision.
You want to submit that letter as evidence to the board?
Yes.
Then yes, it'll be part of the record.
Thank you. Has anybody asked the applicant what he intends to do with this structure?
So the zoning code prevents you from having a business in a residential zone. That's the same for if you have a 1,000 square foot garage or a 2,000 square foot garage, or you're doing it out of your house. You're not allowed to run a business. He did describe the use as being for his RVs, his trailer, and he did say workshop area.
For just personal.
It's not illegal.
Okay.
Unless he's, building something there and selling that from his lot.
Okay. I have nothing further for the board, assuming that my letter, is being put into evidence, which you said it will be.
Yes, it will. Okay, thank you, Mr. Settle.
Thank you.
We will move down the list to Ginger Kabbalah.
We'll try that again.
Yes.
Okay.
You hear me this time?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I know what happened. I think I'm like Tracy. I'm signed on 3 different things, and one of them doesn't have a speaker, or a microphone. So I'm the 2 properties immediately adjacent to the appellant's request for the variance at 10033 Fields Erdel. And
clarify before you go on, these 2 properties here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's my house. Okay, so from my window, I can see Fields Erdel. From my front yard, I can see all the vegetation, but I also see the backyards and I see cars driving by, and I can certainly see this resident's house. So if I walk out into my yard, I can definitely see it. So visually, it's definitely going to affect, depending on what it looks like, my sense of beautiful property, I guess. So the building is going to span both of my properties, and it will only be 25 feet from the border. I believe that his outbuilding is actually closer to my house than it is his house. So I know I understand that he's within his rights to have it within 25 feet of my property line, but that just sort of like Tracy, doesn't seem right to have a huge, great big metal building, just staring me right in the face when I could before see, a prettier scenery. So that's a vision problem. So I would definitely oppose the variance enlargement. I mean, as small as possible from my point of view, would be from a prettiness point of view, my request. And I would just say, first of all, at least stay within the building code or the zoning code, bare minimum. The stormwater drainage is a worry for me. When it rains hard, I can see a lake in my front yard. It's just the percolation's not all that great there. I have to make sure there's no leaks at all around my windows or water comes into my basement, things like that. It's just, there's a lot of drainage problem in that area. So a bigger building in the back, I'm told, is going to affect drainage onto my property. This this lot that I haven't built on yet, it may affect where I might place, you know, a house. I don't know how important that is, but in any case, a huge pole barn at the back of his property is going to negatively impact both of my properties as far as scenery goes. And I guess that's the main thing that I wanted to say. You know, I believe in, you know, people's property rights and in being allowed to do anything that's within code, but I think the civil engineers probably might have a different opinion regarding the stormwater runoff. And I've never met Tracy, but I pretty much agree with everything she said. I think that's it.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for her? This is the property that adjoins the back of the appellant's property. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kabala. And we've heard from everybody else on the list now. So I don't know if Randy and Melissa Sadler had something new to say. Their hand is raised. And Mr. Chairman, it's up to you if you want to allow them to speak again.
Yes, we'll allow them to speak. Hello, Mr. Sadler?
Yes, Mr. Sadler again. And since Bob Sell came late, I just wanted to let him know that Larry Norris did hear everything that's going on and did not have anything to add to the meeting. I spoke for him while I was here. That's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. We'll go down the list to Don Fleischl.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Don Fleischl and I live at 9975 Sadler Circle. So basically I'm across the street from where Braxton Miller lives. It's just a couple houses down from where Ginger Kabala lives. And my main thing is in having such a large structure there, I do not know if I would be able to see it or not. I know I can see through the backyards during the winter when the leaves and stuff are off of the trees. But also have a lot of concerns about having such a large structure of the property values, which is very important to me. I just moved here about 4 years ago and very much looking to stay here for the rest of my life. And I have concerns about something large like that being built and affecting not just the aesthetics, but also the property values also.
Okay.
Just keep it short and sweet.
Thank you, Mr. Fleischl. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Fleischl? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fleischl. At this time, there's no other hands raised. We are going to close the floor, so to speak, and discuss. I saw a hand. Brian?
The applicant,
Yes.
Don Fleischl just spoke, so let me lower his hand. And so the applicant has his hand raised.
All right. Let Mr. Grosclose speak quickly.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say I appreciate the concerns of my neighbors. I do enjoy the view back here into the woods myself. Also, we sit on the back porch and watch. It is my intention to make the coloring on the barn something that is as blendy into the neighborhood and the background as possible. Either a green to blend into the trees some, or the red similar to my house color to help match and blend into the other surrounding houses, a fire brick red. So I just wanted to say that it is my intention to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grosclose. Okay, at this time, we'll close the floor. so that the committee can speak amongst themselves. Ralph, would you like to go first?
I will go first. The first thing is I've been hearing all the testimony from all the neighbors, and I do agree with some of them that this structure is going to be a very large structure, and it's going to take up almost the entire backyard, even though it could sit 25 feet off of the property lines. But I am concerned about the size of this structure. And just because of that, I'm not likely to grant the variance, but we'll, just make it so he could build a 2,000 square foot building on the property. So I will not vote for the variance at all, even if we could conceal the building.
Okay. Darcy? Darcy, we still cannot hear you. When we come to the vote, we will ask you for a thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay. Jack?
Okay. I think Mr. Grosclose is listening, and he is going to do what he can to help mitigate some of the circumstances and concerns of the neighbors. Certainly there were a number, I counted 5 or 6 different issues that were raised up. I think there are other processes that the neighbors have in terms of the drainage, the leach field, and when it comes to the building permitting process, that if they have some concerns, they can address those or raise those in that time period. Certainly Mr. Settle has a list. Obviously we've not been privy to it, but I don't think that would be influencing our decision here tonight. I think it's something that the applicant is going to have to work with other departments in the Symmes Township to get this project completed. I would definitely align with Ralph's point of view on this. There was nothing that was really compelling that I heard that said that we ought to grant a variance of almost 30% over what's permitted. I think 22,000 square foot is very large. It is going to be very visible. And I think that, there's reasons why those square footages are developed first in the Hamilton County and then reapplied to Symmes Township. And I just don't feel that there was anything that would justify making an exception to what is the standard policy for the township and the county in terms of outbuildings.
Okay. I tend to agree. I don't see a compelling reason to make it that much larger when it's already quite large, what's allowed in the zoning code. Darcy, if your microphone starts working, let us know. Just jump in. Otherwise, we're going to make a motion.
How about Byron? Did he drop off?
He dropped off and hasn't logged back in.
He did. His laptop died. He said he logged back in.
Should we wait for him to at least attempt, or should we go forward?
I believe he heard everything because it just happened.
We just need his vote.
It says, is there something I can do to be heard? I have a raise hand option. So he's somewhere, but he's not listed anywhere on the list of attendees or as a panelist like he was before. So I can't do anything because I can't find him.
Jennifer, can you read his mind tonight?
Oh, I cannot.
Another Jack Horvath. I'm not sure if Drew has any suggestions. Mr. Lowry.
Hey, what do you need?
The There were 2 Jack Horvaths before. And now there's,
Oh, okay.
his laptop died and he's trying to get back in on his phone.
Byron is.
Byron.
Okay.
It's Byron.
Yeah, Byron Fowler.
Yeah.
But he was logged in as Jack Horvath before because he had Jack sent him an email and he clicked the link.
Because I sent him my link. Yeah.
Right. He said he could see everything and he had an option to raise his hand, but he's not listed as any of the.
Oh, so he must be an attendee.
No, hold on. Yeah, he's in the attendees as himself. Okay, here we go. All right.
Now he can unmute himself.
He just sent an email.
Yeah.
With his vote.
No, but he's on now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you, Byron.
Okay. I'm here. I've been listening.
Wonderful. We were discussing, and did you want to add anything to the conversation?
No, I pretty much agree with everything I've heard. I'm opposed to this variance.
Okay. It sounds like we need a motion. Okay, if there's no volunteers, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that we deny the application variance request SBZA 2020-09 at 10,033 Fields Erdel Road.
I second.
Ready?
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes, I agree with the motion.
Ms. Harlow?
Yes.
Mr. Havel?
He's giving a thumbs up.
Yes. Mr. Horvath?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Okay. That concludes the hearing for this variance application. You are welcome to leave the Zoom meeting at this time. We will be hearing another case. It is BZA number 2020-10 at 11,820 Enyart Road regarding additions to Symmes Elementary. Mr. Snyder.
Just give me 1 second to get the right graphic.
People left.
No, not very many.
Okay.
Obviously they all can. They don't have to stay for the whole meeting if they don't want to, or they can.
No, they can. That's their
Okay,
choice.
so this is as you said, Madam Chairman, this is case 2020-10. Pull this up. So here's the property. This is the Symmes Elementary School on Enyart Road. The request is for conditional use approval for modifications to the existing site. Those modifications include a 13,300 square foot addition in this area, I believe for pre-K and kindergarten possibly. There is also a 1,500 square foot addition in the kitchen area, and which I believe is over here, and then a 1,905 square foot classroom addition that would extend east off the eastern facade of the building. So another extension over here. And then I believe there's also a small addition here. So they're basically adding on to numerous portions of the existing building. The rest of the existing structure would remain. They are also proposing to make modifications to the parking lot, which would include separating these two areas so that this would become bus parking here and would have a turnaround for buses. And there would be a second driveway that would be constructed here for the regular parking lot. And there would be an additional parking field constructed in the front of the building. Again, the addition would be coming up this way and the parking would be here. They're also talking about creating an above ground detention basin in the rear corner of the property here. and some other small modifications to the existing site, but those are the main additions. The existing property to the north, there's not much happening here. You can see surrounding the property there's multifamily units up here. I believe these are condos. The library. There are single family houses and single family zoning across Enyart Road and also to the south on Pinewood Drive. And in the rear of, it looks like one of the Village of Loveland's salt domes and some wooded vacant land. The property, as I said up here, they're not proposing any changes to this area. The field would remain. The buildings aren't coming out that way. This parking lot would remain, and this parking area, as I said, would just be repurposed for buses, but there are buses in here already. Not a lot of impact to the properties to the north. And the reason I was pointing that out is that it's an area that doesn't have a significant boundary buffer. Technically, boundary buffers are required on all sides of the property. There isn't one with adjacent to the institutional use, and because the two institutions are next to each other, that waives the boundary buffer requirement, even though it's zoned single family. Here, there would be a boundary buffer required. Staff didn't see that being a significant area. If this ever gets redone, the field, we would discuss the boundary buffer at that time. Staff would anyway suggest a boundary buffer at that time. This boundary is pretty significant. And even when they do remove some of the vegetation here for the detention basin, there still will be a significant boundary buffer to this side. And then this area here it does have existing vegetation. It will be getting a little smaller, but the boundary buffer that's required is, I believe it's 10 feet between an institution and a single family. So there will be more than 10 feet of existing vegetation remaining. This area is where it gets a little thin, but I think that's still 10 feet. This is a fairly zoomed out aerial photo. And then some of this would get taken out for the addition too, but they'll be maintaining a boundary of existing vegetation along the southern property line. Additionally, the building coming out here will actually screen a lot of the noise from the buses and the traffic from the residents to the south. So we didn't feel like any boundary buffer additions are needed here. I think they'll actually meet it or exceed it when they're done with just what's already there. And then the only other issue that we identified was a streetscape buffer along Enyart Road. There is no landscaping along Enyart Road. A streetscape is required. They are adding a driveway and adding significant parking. Adding the trees and bushes that are required along the streetscape would be an improvement to the view of the property, and it would help screen the additional parking area. The sign they're reusing, the base of the sign, and it would comply with the zoning resolution. All the step backs comply, heights comply. The materials are similar to the existing building. So other than that, we found that it didn't have any significant deficiencies in relation to the general criteria for conditional uses. We did discuss the boundary buffer at depth, but like I said, the streetscape is the only one that we suggested. We didn't have any issues with lighting. There is a variance being requested for the light poles to be 20 feet in height. The existing poles are 20 feet, and I think they want to take down and reuse some of them and install new ones that match the heights of the ones that are in the existing lot. So they're requesting a variance from 15 feet that's permitted for light poles to 20 feet. They would meet the requirements of a half-a-foot candle at the property line. We would want to see a lighting plan to that effect. I'm sorry, a lighting plan has been submitted that meets that requirement. I apologize. We have a lighting plan that does meet the requirement. So the only thing that they're asking for variance-wise is for additional 5 feet in height for the light poles. And the only thing that staff is suggesting, considering adding to the plan, is a streetscape buffer along Enyart Road. That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer questions.
This is Byron Fowler. That was a lot, and then it sounded like very little. Let me ask specific questions about that. The variance being requested is light poles?
So they have 20-foot tall light poles in their parking lot currently.
But
That's
that's
it.
right. But the only variance being requested is the height of the light poles.
Correct. Yes, they meet all the required setbacks, building heights.
So-
They didn't ask for a streetscape buffer variance. They just didn't show one.
Right. So all the building expansions are not a part of this case.
No, this is a conditional use, not a variance.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
the reason that there is such a thing as a conditional use is to evaluate the impact of institutional uses like this on the surrounding neighborhood before they just build it.
Right. Right.
So-
So all of the expansions you talked about are at issue.
Yes,
Okay.
you're
Thank you.
reviewing the entire site. Yes.
All right.
Are there any other questions for Brian? No? Okay. At this time, we will hear from the applicant. If you,
Would
is
need
this-
to raise his hand?
is this Charlie Yonigan? On behalf of the applicant of Symmes Elementary?
I'm trying to get the applicant's name. I can see if he's on the list.
That
No,
looks-
well, somebody raised their hand. I apologize. I didn't see that.
That's
Okay.
what it looks like.
There we go.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So first off, I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to present the conditional use for Symmes Elementary. My name is Charlie Janigan. I'm the lead architect running the program. Also on the call today, I have my lead project architect who works for SHP named Nick Cristofaro. I also have my lead civil engineer with the Kleinger's group named Steve Cordy. I also have 3 folks from the school district, and if they'd like to speak, they might. Business manager Chad Lewis, Superintendent Frank Forstoffel, and I believe there's a school board member, Paul Ballant, also on the line. A couple things to clarify from what Brian shared, and it looks like he's fallen off of Zoom, is the boundary buffer on the field to the northeast was grandfathered in. When this building was built in 1988, that likely was not a requirement. I also got another communication here, sorry, that the school board president is also on the line. So we have 4 folks from the district that might speak. So I'm going to address the streetscape buffer and the 20-foot lights. Those are the areas that we're looking for some relief on. The first thing is when you have a site this big and putting in 15-foot lights, it really reduces or increases the quantity of lights that you need. So the school currently has 20 feet lights. That's 20-foot tall lights. That's very common for schools. When they have to change light bulbs, having less lights obviously keeps operational costs down, and having taller lights creates a larger foot spread of the lights. So I did provide a light photometric that showed that we are at 0.5 foot candles at the property line, and I don't think 20-foot lights will negatively affect the community. The other item is the streetscape buffer. That is not a very common request for school buildings. You may all live near Enyart or have been in and around this area, and there are cars pulling in all day long, parents to drop off, buses to drop off. We have provided a plan that shows some trees, and we're okay with putting trees, but we really need good sight lines with the quantity of traffic that is pulling in and out. So parents, caregivers, bus drivers can all have clear lines to safely get in and out of the site. We are also working with Hamilton County and discussing a turn lane to also make this site safer. So we think that a lot of the site's improvements of having a bus drop off and having a car drop off will also improve the site. So with that, Melissa Weiss, board president, or Paul Ballant, board members, if they would like to speak, or if any other folks from the design team would like to speak, I'll pass it on.
Thanks, Charlie. Does anyone on the board have any further questions for him before hearing from others presenting on behalf of this appeal?
Could Okay, Mr. Chairman, could I just discuss the streetscape buffer briefly since it was brought up? The zoning resolution requires it for all conditional uses, but it also requires streetscapes, as you're aware, for all commercial developments as well. Pretty much everything except single-family homes is required by the zoning resolution to provide a streetscape. It doesn't say it has to be spaced evenly. It requires you to maintain a clear sight triangle at the entrances, so you can't put bushes that would block sight lines. And you can cluster them wherever you want within the streetscape area. So it's designed, the streetscape buffer is designed to not impact safety specifically in the code. So the other point, there is no grandfathering of anything on this site. Like I said, the entire site is under consideration. When it was built, there was no conditional use for schools. Conditional schools were added to the list of conditional uses after this was built. So it's grandfather currently sitting there, but when they expansions, they lose the grandfathering, and this board is now considering the entire site. You do have the authority to require boundary buffers on all the property lines where they're required, which is why I brought it up and said that staff's position that that boundary buffer wasn't necessary because they're not doing any improvements in that area. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Brian.
This is Byron. I just want to know if there will be other school representatives talking about other issues. I have several questions, but not about streetscape or light poles.
So the applicant is still able to speak, and he has all of those representatives on the phone with him, I believe, unless they're all individual members that are.
I would defer to the board member to ask the questions, and then we can respond accordingly.
Okay, that's fine. Do you mind if I ask question? Be the one to.
Why don't you ask your questions, and then I can help direct the proper person.
That's fine. So this is Byron Fowler, and I'd like to know how many additional students the expansion would be designed for. Is this new kindergarten? Is this new preschool, or is this just expansion based on you already have those classes in that building and that they just need more space? So I'd like to know what the additional student population would be for this construction. And I'd also like to know something about why additional buses would be needed. Because you already have busing and you already have buses and bus parking.
So the overall goal of the project is really to bring Symmes up to the same standard of the other elementary schools that Sycamore has. Mapledale Elementary, Blue Ash Elementary, Montgomery Elementary were all built in the 2000s. And so Symmes, the first goal is to increase the classroom sizes. So the classroom sizes are getting bigger. Some of them are around 700 square feet, 750, and they're going to be all around 850 to 900 square feet. So the classroom sizes are growing. We are adding 8 more classrooms, which is kindergarten and preschool. To respond to the comment on busing is that there is not a designated bus drop-off that kind of follows the rule of safety today. Buses and cars are mixed, and I've spent time watching pickup and drop-off at this school, and it's very unsafe. And so by having it in the way we have it now, it allows the buses to come in, do their thing. Cars can be on the opposite side. They're not mingled. So I don't believe busing has increased. I will actually defer to Chad Lewis. And if Jennifer or Brian, if you could unmute Chad, he can explain other operational issues with the project.
Okay. I don't have that power right now. Drew or Brian? Brian Snyder or Drew? Brian, that's okay. Could you allow Mr. Lewis to speak, please?
Sorry. There we go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you for letting me speak on a couple of those questions. I think it was Mr. Harlow was asking a question about a couple of things with kindergarten and preschool. We have currently a building in the district, Mapledale Elementary, that was built when I first came to the district, 2012, 2013, and opened in 2013. That building, we went through a redistricting process, and that building has increased in enrollment every year since opening. It's kind of that old adage, if you build it, they will come. It has increased to a size where we realized in our master facility planning, when we talked with the community members and listened to their needs before they voted to pass our bond issue for the district, one of the key components that we heard from the community is they wanted us to expand our early childhood options. So we do have preschool and kindergarten in the district, but right now, in order for the families of Symmes Township to get those options of preschool, they have to go to Mapledale Elementary to get those. So as part of our plan, our expansion of our early childhood options would move our early childhood preschool to Symmes Elementary. So that's 4 of the 8 classrooms that you heard that are being added to Symmes Elementary. The other thing is we knew we needed to expand our full day kindergarten options, and that was an important component to our community. So again, the additional 4 classrooms were again to expand full day kindergarten options, because realistically at our other buildings, we're pretty landlocked with space and ability to build unless we can start stacking on top of each other. So like at Montgomery Elementary, you'd have to look at, could you really put a 4th story on? And, again, that's not necessarily possible. From a busing standpoint, there are, I can't say there won't be additional buses added, because if you add more students to a school, obviously there would be a potential to add additional buses, but it wouldn't be a significant amount of buses to be able to add in a non-COVID-19 year. Because right now we are having to bus at a lower capacity than we normally do. So overall, the changes that we're requesting and the things that we need to be able to do at that facility will only enhance the opportunities for our Symmes Township families.
Okay. This is Byron Fowler following up questions on that. How far away, where is Mapledale Elementary located?
It's currently in the center of the district. So if you're familiar with Kenwood Road, if you travel down Kenwood Road from Pfeiffer, it's about halfway between Pfeiffer and Cooper. You left on a street called Hagawa, or the backside of Mapledale Elementary comes out to Zigzag.
So that's as close as you have kindergarten and preschool service currently.
Preschool, we do have kindergarten options at Symmes, but it's not in our minds. It's not going to be enough to sustain the future enrollment of Sycamore.
Right. Okay. And what is going to happen to the athletic fields that I think are going to be impacted by this additional bus parking and the new classroom area?
We're still going to maintain soccer fields. There'll be 2 normal sized fields and then 2 smaller ones. So we've striped it so the smaller kids, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, could still play on the smaller fields. Other questions, and I also think Superintendent Frank Forsthoffel has a few additional words. Brian.
Frank. Okay. There we go.
Thank you, Brian. Members of the board, we're very grateful tonight to have can everybody hear me okay?
Gotcha.
Good, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity just to address the board and your willingness. And Mr. Fowler, I'm really grateful for your questions. And I think Chad, Mr. Lewis summed it up really well in terms of kind of the overarching goal of these classroom additions is to provide more opportunities for our youngest learners in the district, because as we know, The younger we can get them in school, the bigger, the higher trajectory they have. So this was evidence clearly from our almost 2.5 years of public engagement throughout this process. So we're excited about this opportunity. We've worked incredibly hard to work through the design process. So it fits for our learners, but also is conducive for the surrounding community. So I'd be happy to take any other questions as we move forward with this, but we're grateful for the opportunity to share our vision tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Forstoffel. Does anyone on the board have any questions for him at this time?
No questions. Do we have anybody that is in the waiting room to either talk for or against this?
I would assume that we do.
Okay. So you see people. All right. I'll hold off any comments till we get through all those.
Okay. Do we have it? Go ahead.
Are we ready to move into other speakers? I will take the applicants off.
Okay. If there's anyone else who would like to speak for this motion, please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see anyone raising hands. So if you are here to speak against this motion, and again, that's against this motion, or against this application, please raise your hand so that we can hear you speak. I see Kevin Kane first.
Okay.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for having me tonight. I guess I have more just questions or concerns versus just being wholeheartedly against the application. So I just want to share that with folks. But the questions I have are kind of really grouped with preservation of green space and potential impacts of the detention basin on my property, as well as a third question around implementation of a low slope membrane roofing on the extension with whereas the, I guess, letter description in a letter said, you know, maintaining current materials and vocabulary of the current school buildings. So to address the first point, so I own a property at 9168 Pinewood Drive. So I'm south of the school, and I will be directly south of the southern detention basin that's identified in the plans. So this picture looks like it was taken a little while ago. So the tree line there that's shown in this picture has actually been pushed south about, my guess would be 30 or 40 feet from where it's currently shown from since we moved into this property. And so with the, you know, loss of green space, you know, that's obviously a concern of ours, as one of our appeals for this property was the natural boundary that we did have behind our fence line. As it concerns the detention basin, just some questions I had with that is if we should expect any negative impacts to our property from that, with things from additional lighting in that area or inclusion of any fencing. If I should be concerned about any standing water associated with that detention basin, which might cause mosquito and bug problems. And then what was not clear to me also from the plans is how that would be finished, if that would, you know, be finished off with just planted grass, or if that would go wild, or just kind of what aesthetics we should be expecting from that addition. So those are my questions for the applicant.
So the detention basin is in the area where detention is currently going. I I believe the woods that were taken out that you referred to were done to improve the existing drainage. The detention basin, I can't speak for what it'll look like, but it will be designed to handle all of the stormwater on the site. Hamilton County's Stormwater and Infrastructure Division will be in charge of reviewing the design of it and for inspecting it to make sure it was built properly, and then for requiring maintenance, ongoing maintenance of it to prevent the kind of health problems that you were talking about. I don't see a fence around it on the plans, and my assumption that it would be mostly grass, like your typical detention basin that you see around commercial developments and other institutional properties.
Is this a dry or is it a wet?
I believe it's dry. I
Okay.
don't think it's a retention basin. I believe it's a detention basin.
Detention, not retention. Okay.
Good. I believe Charlie Janigan, I believe is the.
Thanks. Yeah. Brian's correct that it is dry, and also I've got the civil engineer who's designed it, Steve Cordy, on. So if Brian, if you want to unmute Steve, he can address any of the technicalities of how the detention basin will function and how the neighbors hopefully will not be negatively affected. Steve.
Hello, this is Steve. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Yeah, my name is Steve Cordy again with the Kleinger's Group. We are the civil engineers working with SHP and the school district on the site design. I think a lot of the questions were answered already. Good job, Brian. This detention basin is going to be a dry detention basin. So basically it'll have a little swale going down the bottom of it. It'll have grass, it'll be lined with grass. Generally the design is it's dry most of the year, right? Until it rains, and then it'll fill up and be managed per Hamilton County's regulations. So as Brian alluded, this will all get submitted to Hamilton County Public Works for review. We'll follow the requirements for stormwater management, as well as OEPA has requirements for water quality management. So we're tucking it in the rear. Generally, there's a low-lying swale kind of on the school property going through that area. Currently, we will have to expand it a little bit. Frankly, we need the volume to meet the county's requirements, so we have to expand it. That kind of explains some of the tree removal. We're trying to minimize it, but again, we're tucking in the rear because that's kind of where the natural drainage goes currently at the lower end of the site. So I would call it a traditional, grass detention basin. It will not be a permanent pool of water. That's the intent. Also, just for the record, it won't impact this property owner, but there's a second detention basin. You didn't mention it, Brian, on the northern side as well. It's kind of two sub drainage areas to serve the site. Does that answer the questions?
Yeah, Mr. Cordy, given that it is basically a very large swale that'll be filled with grass, there's no need for any kind of lighting that would disrupt Mr. Kane's property?
I'm unaware of any lighting necessary in the rear. I mean, I don't know if there's lights on the building for whatever, but I'm unaware of any additional lighting being put back there for any reasons.
So
Charlie,
nothing
is that
associated with your project?
There's no lighting that will be used to light up the detention.
Okay.
The lighting is for parking lots and sidewalks.
Okay, good, thanks. Brian, where's this second detention basin? Is that up by the ball fields?
Yes. It's here.
Oh, okay.
Proposed in this
So it's
area.
nowhere near the property line.
No, it's on. Like I said, this whole area is untouched.
Unaffected.
Down,
Okay.
Down here, it's in line with this parking lot.
Got it. Okay.
And just one other comment on, and I don't have the exact percentage, I'm just kind of interpolating it. We are clearing some of the existing vegetation, but this is a 25-acre site. The number might be somewhere in the range of 5 to 7%, if not lower, of the amount we're going to clear for this development. So it's quite a minor amount of vegetation we're touching.
And on that southern front line, we are maintaining adjacent to that southern detention basin. We are maintaining, I think I measured it was like a minimum of approximately 40 feet of buffer. So again, trying to be sensitive to keep as much as reasonable and practical for the neighbors.
Okay, so thank you for the responses on that. I guess there's one clarification I did want to make. So as Mr. Snyder indicated, there is existing detention in that area, which is correct. It is, however, it's underground. Is there a reason why this is changing from an underground to an above ground detention system?
Yeah, this is Steve Cordy again. Basically, the old tank, it's really for two reasons. It's not big enough, and it was going to be really complicated to try to do half of it in the tank and half of it out of the tank. And secondly, we have to introduce water quality into the mix, and the most effective way to do that is basically to combine it all in one surface basin to make it more easily to be maintained. So it just made sense. These tanks are getting older too. I mean, they're 30 plus years old. They're probably, I mean, over the hump, if you will, on their useful life. So we felt it was best to just kind of combine in a grass basin on the surface as you would traditionally see in most developments.
Okay, and so then I think the answers I heard to my questions or concerns was there will be no additional lighting, specifically no pole lighting in this area. There are no fencing plans associated with this detention basin, and I should not expect to have any health issues regarding or resulting from standing water in the area. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. My second concern, as I mentioned, was with regarding to the roof, proposed roof finish. So as I look at the letter as it reads, goal is to allow the new additions to blend in with the existing materials and vocabulary of the current school building. However, the proposed roof for the large section there on the pre-K addition is a low slope and membrane roof, looks to be a white membrane roof, which to me very much looks like a industrial warehouse and not necessarily an extension of the current architecture of the school.
And I can address that. We did estimate the job of having a pitched roof, but that roof material is quite expensive. In the order of around $20 a square foot for a sloped metal roof that doesn't include the steel below it. That's a little more steel. The low slope membrane roof comes in around $7 to $8 a square foot, so it's a substantial savings. This building, as you mentioned, is kind of tucked away a little bit, and so we felt architecturally we could get away with not putting a pitched roof on there, and the district has been okay with that. As a solution. There are minor areas of that building that have that same roof. That material, low slope membrane roof, basically is a pool liner. So companies that make pool liners also make roof materials. They want to keep water out or keep water from leaking. And so we've used this type of system on many districts throughout Ohio, and it's proven to be successful.
Okay, and to your comment around it being tucked away, so I mean, I don't know if any of my other neighbors will be speaking tonight, but I believe the building height is about 13 feet. So that would be quite visible from their second floor windows. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. If that is all, we will, I believe there are other people waiting to speak.
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Go back
We will go down the list to, I believe it's Keith Dolby is next.
All right.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
So I am a resident immediately across from the school. I moved in back in May because of the environment and the aesthetics of the area. Paid actually pretty good premium for the property as well. And I believe looking at the artist renditions, yes, my address is 11793. If you move your cursor immediately left on the second house from the bend, which if I look at the artist renditions here, I believe you'll have that second entrance that's coming out be immediately in front of my property. Unfortunately, these artist renditions that were provided in the letter are kind of inadequate as far as what I can tell, as far as actually what overall effect the parking lot and change to the traffic flow is going to be. So my primary concern is there, what is actually the impact going to be with traffic flow in the area is one of the major issues I have. With the increased population with the pre-K and kindergarten, I would expect a lot more traffic flow along this rather skinny 2-lane road, which is immediately in front of my property. And I think it was mentioned there's a possibility of a turn lane being required down the road, but I've not seen anything actually in writing that that's being.
So the way that works, the county engineer has to approve the new driveway coming onto the county. And the county engineer, if they feel a traffic impact study is required, which it sounds like they did, they require you to do that, the applicant to do that at their expense prior to them approving the driveway. And if the traffic impact study says that to maintain adequate flow on the county road, that you have to build a turn lane into the property, the county engineer will require you to build it at your expense before they allow you to open the driveway. So the way that works is all through the Hamilton County Engineer's office. It's the right of way is controlled by the county engineer because it's a county road, and improvements that happen inside the right of way are not the purview of this board.
Okay.
That's your question about traffic and the location of the driveway. The driveway is a new driveway. The traffic would be separated, so buses would be going in and out of the same place they do currently. But the rest of the traffic that goes to the school would be coming out the driveway that they're adding across from your property.
Right. And also what I'm looking at is obviously with the current circumstances with COVID and student populations being transportation, right now Cooper Road at the junior high is pretty much shut down for an hour almost every day. Yeah. And I'm concerned about that happening as well here on my road here. So that's a major concern of mine with that regarding that. So that's an issue there. So then it's going to obviously impact the green space. Go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead. Respond.
So Brian, to Mr. Dolby's point here, let me just ask you this. Is the process that is done by the Hamilton County Traffic, both the assessment and then the, I guess, any kind of open public review, is that available to citizens in this area that folks may be able to participate in that? I know that's separate from our process, but I'm just wondering if your experience would let Mr. Dolby know that there's going to be another process that they can input their concerns.
No, there won't be. The county engineer's process is strictly traffic engineering related. So the engineers talk to the engineers and they review the plans, and they either do or don't. It's a black and white idea of the number of cars that come out onto the road signifies this improvement. You have to draw it this way. It has to be done this size. Yeah, it's not a public participation process. The county engineer is responsible for reviewing the engineering.
Has that already been conducted?
Say that again.
Has that been conducted already?
Like I said, it sounds like it because they were talking about working with the county on a left turn lane into the development. Again, like I said, it's being a traffic engineering exercise. There's a number that they have to hit, and they'll find that out when they try to get the permit for the driveway when they build it, which is why I believe they probably have already spoken to the county engineer. I believe Steve Cordy might be able to answer that because he's the civil engineer. So I'll allow him to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. It's a great question. We have, as Charlie alluded to a few minutes ago, we did conduct a traffic impact study on this property for the proposed development is typical for any school. We have been in regular contact back and forth with the Hamilton County Engineer's Office, who has jurisdiction over this road. Generally, the impacts of the traffic impact study is it's, as you mentioned, it's a 2-lane road, if you know, an old country road, a little more traffic these days, of course, but a southbound left turn lane is warranted into the proposed driveway. It may or may not be warranted into the northern driveway, which is going to be the bus driveway in the final condition. So, but at the very least, with all the cars that are going to be turning left that currently turn left, or pre-COVID, I should say, and currently turn left into the site, there will be a left turn lane. We are in the preliminary stages of planning that. Generally, the widening would probably happen all on the school side of the road to provide the width necessary to add that center left turn southbound left lane into the site. So all this has been prepared in the traffic study and submitted to the county, and they're generally on board. I think I can speak for the county engineer's office and say they're in support of this southbound left turn lane. So we're kind of working through the next steps of the details of what's going to need to happen to make, the drawings happen. But it obviously, the left turn lane will get through will allow through traffic to continue, going south when cars are left into the site. So, but that's the results, the impacts of the traffic impact study.
Okay, with that in mind, with the left turn lane, what property will be taken in order to widen the road? Because I know immediately on the other side, there's also a fire extinguisher, which means there's a pretty significant water line underneath that area. So are they going to be processing to use the property to the school, or are they going to be looking at possibly taking the property line to our side or the road?
It's at this point, preliminarily, an intent, we believe that geometrically all the widening can happen on the east side, the school side of the road, including the taper. So basically, at this early stage, and your point's valid, I mean, we're not to the point yet of working through the detailed underground utilities, but I believe the pole line, the power poles line is on the west side of the road. So there's not a pole line in the way. There might be one pole that would need to be moved. Maybe a hydrant or two would need to be moved. But preliminarily, it looks like the path of least resistance is on the school side, which is always better because, impacting the school property versus the other side of the street in this case. So we're aiming to do the widening on the east side of the road to not impact the residents on the west side with, construction and driveway reworking and all that. So that's where we're going with it. It's not set in stone completely, but that's certainly the intent. Much more cost effective in this case to go on the east side.
Yeah, I would hope to agree with that. Secondarily, we talked about green space areas. Immediately in front of my property, obviously, we have there's 3 to 4 soccer. It's going to be turned into one entire parking lot. If you can speak more to that, as well as it was commented by I think it was the superintendent, the area was going to be that the new area is going to be tucked away. That's pretty much going to be almost the immediate impact coming from Montgomery Road. That addition is going to be the first thing that comes out as soon as you come around the bend from the library. So it's going to be very visible. And if the structure is not matching the rest of the building, I mean, it's like the other previous person mentioned, it looks more like a warehouse space than it does a school.
So looking at it, I think you have the same rendering. There's I believe that Mr. Jennings is probably going to point out there's a large part of the school that already has that roof on it on the front. So I think that's the artist rendition everybody is talking about.
Yeah, that would be correct. That's a very common use for school buildings. If you would do the math on having a sloped roof on that, the $12 difference, it enables us to put more features within the building. So the sloped roof was not a consideration throughout the design. We were putting our money within the classrooms and technology and security inside the building. To address the playfields, Brian, is there any way I can share my screen? Because I have these exhibits that show that there will be 4 playfields.
Oh, that's a good question. It's not for me.
Okay.
I can't let you share the screen, I don't believe.
Okay. If you look at a Google Maps aerial, you can see that there's one large field in the northeast corner. Then south of the library is a smaller field. And then the area across from, I believe Mr. Lowry mentioned, there's 2 small fields right there. And those are basically for, 5 and 7-year-olds, Pee-wee soccer, basically. Our proposed plan will still maintain 4 soccer fields. So there's 4 today. We will have 4 when we're done.
Will they be in the same place in the same area in front of the parking lot?
Yeah, there's basically 3 along the road. Just there's a bus lot in between them. So there's one where you have your cursor. There's one where you have your cursor, and then there's one to the south of that.
On the other side of the proposed driveway?
Yeah.
Yes.
On either side?
Yeah.
So again, I guess my main concern is how large a parking area is it going to be expanded to? Is it going to be 50% bigger? I mean, the spacings mentioned it was still going to be less than 200 passenger vehicles parking spaces, but I'm guessing that's not including the full expansion of that one parking space.
The school has 160. The school has 169 parking spots today, and we're going to go up to 186. So it's an increase of 17.
What's the spacings for the bus currently versus what it is going future?
The bus spot will have 13 buses, and right now they really do not have striped busing on the site. So they kind of stack and again, where you live, you can see that it's not the safest situation. Our proposal is creating a much safer site circulation scenario.
But I think the point is that you're losing a lot more than spaces than in the bus area. The parking lot is being added because you're losing a number of spaces where the bus parking is proposed to be. And so you're only gaining 16 net spaces on the entire site, but you're relocating, I don't know, 70 or 80?
Yeah, I don't have a layout in front of me that shows that bus parking lot, but yeah.
It was a double row of parking all the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you're almost doubling the space, which is going to require almost 2 additional parking lanes coming towards the road from the current area that's parallel to the building. Is that correct?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking.
Okay. Again, I was looking for more artist renditions of schematics. I guess when those will be available, but anyway, okay, I'm good. I understand. Address my issues with that, with the entrance and parking lane. And the last thing I'd like to go over is where the water retention basin is, because my kids have used the learning space in the woods behind the building, and I'm wondering if that's going to be impacted by this expansion of the water retention basin and loss of green space that the previous resident had spoken about.
No, we're not. We're well aware of the nature walk that's back there, and we're not impacting that at all. We on day one, we were told by the teachers, stay away. So we understand the value of that to your community.
I mean, as far as this board's emotions on it, I mean, other than the secondary entrance right across my own property, I don't know where else I'll find more information about that, when that's going to happen, or where I can research it to see what's been published so far as getting this process going.
Well, the location of the driveway and the fact that there is a second driveway is going to be decided by this board as part of this case. The design of the driveway and the design of the road improvements would be handled between the county engineer and the project engineer.
All right. At this point, I guess I'll just go ahead and lower my hand and let somebody else speak.
Okay. Before we change, this is Byron Fowler. I have a question. I'd like to know how many buses park overnight there now, and how many buses will park overnight in the future with this plan?
Yeah. Can you hear me? If I believe Chad Lewis can unmute also and address this. There are 0 buses that park there at night. The district has a bus compound within the city of Montgomery. And so, Chad, do you want to verify that?
That's correct. 0 buses park on that property. And I think it's important to point out we're certainly committed to working with the county traffic engineer to do whatever improvements that are needed, but we're only talking about 2 periods of time that are about 15-minute spans where we're having cars come in and out for the opening and closure of school. The rest of the time, staff is trickling in and trickling out. You know, there's not a huge traffic jam created. I was just out there Friday on the 4th day of school and it was cleared out in about 10 minutes.
You're not only saying that there are 0 buses parked there now, there will be 0 buses parked there in the future under this plan.
As you're talking about, if you're talking about overnight parking of buses, there are
Yes.
0 that do that and 0 that will do that in the future. We have our buses protected behind gates and fencing on Cooper Road for the sheer fact that you would not want expensive assets like that just sitting out in an open parking lot.
Right. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, we ready to?
Yeah, we'll go to Sean Mckee.
There we go.
Hello, Mr. Mckee or Miss Mckee. Sean Mckee, are you able to hear us?
Let's try the other Sean Mckee.
Hello?
Yes, now we got it.
There we go. I'm sorry. I wanted to say thank you for allowing me to take the time to speak with you today. I'm in agreement with Mr. Kane and Mr. Paul, who's going to speak shortly, as to what's going on. One of our concerns is the structure backs right up to our property. So we are concerned about the clearance of existing vegetation and the buffer that's going to be eliminated from our property and the new structure. If I understand, looking at the blueprints correctly, the actual structure itself will come within about 100 feet of the property line. But there's also a playground, I believe, that's going to be attached to the back side. And that is going to come within, I believe, 10 feet of the property line on my property. And the property line is basically in the middle of those woods. So they're going to be taking out a good chunk of those woods on my property. And our concern is basically what type of vegetation or greenery is going to be used, if any, to replace the natural barrier that we have. And we also are looking to see if there's, if I'm reading this correctly, if there's going to be a playground back there, if there's going to be some type of fencing around the playground and a barrier or a natural barrier. So basically the kids aren't looking into my backyard and I'm not looking into theirs. So we're concerned about that and what type of fencing would be used, if any, if that's in the plans. And so those are my concerns as of right now. If you bring up your map, by Mr. Snyder's own admission, my property is where the vegetation gets very thin. So I believe we're gonna lose a lot of that natural barrier. So that's me right there where the A is. Yeah, that's me right there. And the property line comes right through the middle of those woods, which are already thin. And so with those being removed due to the playground going in there, we're losing quite a bit. And I'd really, like I said, like to see what the plans are for the vegetation to replace that natural barrier that's going to be removed. And there are significant trees in there as well, majestic trees that are probably close to, 50, 60 years old, some really nice hickory trees that are going to be removed. So that's what my concern is. I'd like to see if there's anybody that could answer some of those.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, the staff report did include discussion about the playground. I apologize, I left it out of my presentation. There is a playground in this area where the clearing mostly exists. And the staff report did identify a potential need for potential fencing or even relocating the playground to a different location on the property where there's more vegetation or less impact on adjacent property owners, and at the very least, the possibility of putting up some kind of privacy fence on the edge of the playground to address the proximity of the playground to this. That's an area where there isn't currently a lot of activity. And I don't believe this is 10, I think it's closer to 20. The vegetation that would be removed along the back of this, there would be none. They're not proposing to remove vegetation from this area here. They are talking about squaring off a small portion of this and then removing some of the front of this vegetation here. But like I said earlier, the amount of space and buffering that's left in this area would probably meet the code requirements for buffering that's required for boundary buffers. But in the staff report, we did identify this playground and the proximity to the homes on Pinewood as an issue and suggested consideration for fencing along that edge or relocating the playground elsewhere.
Is that something that we could get put into the contract or the record, that if that playground goes in as currently in the blueprint, then some greenery would be required? Significant greenery, not a 1 or 2 foot boxwood, but something that our local NATORPs would suggest.
Not probably that, but because what's there does meet the boundary buffer requirements, but the board does have the authority to require additional landscaping or fencing or even relocation of the playground. So it's up to the board.
Mr. Mckee, if I was in your situation, one of the things that I would be most concerned about is noise. I don't know if you've been out and about, I'm sure you have. When it comes to a playground during the daytime, it can be extremely noisy and chaotic. And my request would be, how is the SHP and the plan going to address not only the aesthetics, but also the noise? Maybe it is a combination of fence and softscape. Maybe it is required that it be moved someplace else, but that would be my concern, would be the noise as well as, what you see.
Yes, sir, that is a concern. We do hear the children out today. Now that I'm working from home, I do hear them now that they've returned to school, but it's not something that I've addressed in my concern. So thank you for that. But now that you've brought that up, obviously it is a concern. When we were over the weekend, we were at NATORPs discussing with them what they would suggest for some type of shrubs or natural hedging for this. They did mention specific plants, and I'll just looking to see if those types of things are something that the school would consult with or consider.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Mr. Mckee, is your house the one, do you have solar panels on your roof?
No, I do not. I'm the house next to that where the A is on that map.
Okay, I see it. All right. So the Brian is right. I just did a scale on a drawing. The thinnest the vegetation will get, Brian, if you want to move your mouse above that A, it's about 20 feet. I just took a scale off of a drawing, and we are not taking it away there. Move to the left a little bit, Brian, and up closer to the field now. We're going to remove some of that over there for the building. It will still be about 40 to 50 feet thick there. So
there is some shown being removed in this area here.
Yeah. So To address the playground, it will be fenced in. This is a preschool playground, and that wing, the 13,000 square foot wing, is for preschool students. The only other logical place to move it would be to the left of the wing, and then it would be right along the driveway, which we do not want to have children who are going to the playground maybe 2 or 3 times a day because they're preschoolers right next to the driveway. It's very secure where it is today. We are considering poured rubber as a surface, which helps absorb sound, and it will also be fenced in with 4 feet of fence. The other thing to mention is that we do have a landscape architect on the job who probably knows folks at NATORBS, who will work with doing what we need to do to reduce acoustics if it is deemed a loud area. But you know, the school's been here since 1988, and we're going to continue to keep it here. And I think having the preschool offering is a benefit for the community as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, I'm in agreement with what's going on. I'm just concerned about the aesthetics and what it will do coming so close to that thin area.
And the playgrounds have a lot of codes today. So this will be designed for 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. It will be a much shorter structure. You don't want those age kids going up 8 feet in the air. So it's a lot of smaller activities. Playgrounds need to be ADA compliant today. So there's a lot of lower activities. And do not think of this as like a junior high playground or where you're going to have, 500 kids out there at once. It'll be smaller groups throughout the day to get that energy out.
Yeah,
preschool and
I
kindergarten.
appreciate that. And thank you for that. The fence is important because I have a dog. I know a couple neighbors have dogs as well. So, with the kids out there, and if one of the dogs gets loose, obviously a fence is an important thing.
Yeah, for safety and security, that would be fenced in.
Okay. Is that a privacy fence or?
It's probably a black vinyl coated fence. And if we needed to put privacy slats on the south side, that would not be a big deal.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
The just to clarify, the landscape plan that was submitted with this package doesn't show the playground being there at all, and doesn't indicate any landscaping along that property line.
So if the playground is there, can we have it put in the record that landscaping will be part of the deal?
So that's something the board will decide.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McKee. We'll keep going down the list. Andrew Paul, I believe, is up next.
Right, so
Andrew Paul, if you're there, please unmute yourself.
let's try the other Andrew Paul.
Hello?
Yep.
Yep. So I'm another one who's using one device to follow screen and one to talk on. So you can't hear me now? Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Good evening. My name is Andrew Paul, and I live with my 2 school-age children at 9140 Pinewood, and I've been a resident here since 2003. And so as the gentleman referred to earlier, there is a home with solar panels, and that's my home. So I'm in lot 32. I'm the next door neighbor to Sean and Kim Mckee. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am happy for Sycamore Schools that they're able to pursue improvements, and I wish them well in their endeavors to improve their facilities and ultimately improve the quality of education for their students. That said, I do have a few concerns with how they're implementing those improvements. And I simply want to focus on 2 points. One is a very simple one, and that is, as was mentioned in the discussion with Streetscape earlier, the egress from the school. One of the points there is to promote safety, And currently, people who are using that exit blow the stop sign routinely, and it's ignored by parents en masse, as in 2, 3, 4, 5 cars drive out at a time. And I appreciate that the zoning board cannot police individual drivers. However, I would like to point out that the current stop sign does not appear to be posted at standard height for road signs. It's kind of nestled off to the side. So when improvements are done, I would ask that you take a look at how the sign is put in, make sure that it's prominently, standardly displayed, and same thing for any additional exits as was discussed previously. Now I'd like to turn to my primary item, which is the tree line, and that's the established tree line that grows on the common border between the school's south property line and Wexford neighborhood's north property line. And I'd like to comment particularly as it relates to my lot and the lot of the Mckees. I'm lot 32, the one with the solar panels. The Mckees are one east of me. And we are both ones that are in the area where the proposed playground will be. The existing tree line has been in place for a very long time, longer than the school has been there. And it's made up of many mature trees, including sycamores, oaks, and shagbark hickories. And I have done measurements on those using a standard estimating method, and a number of those trees are likely over 100 years old. This tree line's been enjoyed by neighbors and the school alike, as well as the sports teams that make use of those fields and their families. Between the mature trees, there's significant underbrush growth, honeysuckle and the like, and the tree line provides a significant visual and sound block between the neighborhood and the school. In the school's proposal brief, when they were addressing the section that requires landscaping to be installed in accordance with one of certain enumerated buffers, the school responded by indicating that the existing buffer will be maintained. And then they discussed some shrubs that are being planted in the parking lot. However, I don't think that's an entirely fair statement. I think the statement minimizes and can even be said to misinform the amount of the existing buffer, namely the tree line, that's going to be cut away and significantly diminished. If you take a look at the attachment C120, which is entitled Demolition Plan, a significant amount of vegetation is going to be cut away. And I can appreciate that not every individual tree is going to be shown on construction plans, but it can be seen that the depictions in those construction plans show varying amounts of tree line that are significant, especially, again, relating to my lot and the McKee's lot. Additionally, there's not, it's not clear, and I know that the gentleman from, not from SHP, but the other gentleman who's speaking with it as HP, did talk about the how much vegetation will be cut around the playground. I would like to ask that the amount of vegetation is minimally cut away, and that the I'm sorry, and that if there is vegetation cut away, then a suitable barrier be put in place. So very simply put, my requests to the appeal boards are this: 3 points. 1, require the school to clarify with reasonable specificity, not undue specificity, but reasonable specificity, how far from the actual property line they plan to remove trees and underbrush. Number 2, require the school to remove only the minimum amount of tree line necessary, namely not to ruin the effectiveness of the tree line's visual and noise blocking effect. And then 3, to require the school to plant additional trees, perhaps evergreens, to supplement whatever it is that they remove. And as Mr. Mckee mentioned before, I'd be certainly happy if they were to consult somebody locally, and I'm sure that their firm has people that can be consulted on what would be appropriate vegetation to put in place of that. So in some, I'm not asking to save every tree and shrub. Rather, I'm asking you to take a look at what it's like to be a resident who's enjoyed a substantial tree line for a significant amount of time. And that was a significant draw in why I purchased my home in the first place. And asking you to maintain the tree line as best reasonably possible in order to keep the visual and sound barrier between the school and the neighborhood. And I'm happy to answer any questions regarding my property and its effect and the effects of the proposal on my property.
Hey, does anyone from the board have questions for Mr. Paul? Looks like no. Okay, thank you, Mr. Paul.
Thank you.
We will now hear from Matt Blair.
I'm not positive, but I think he might be with the team.
Okay.
I just while we're waiting for him to clarify that,
Yeah, good evening. It's Matt Blair.
Yeah, good.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Yeah, you're with the team, right? You're with the applicant. You're with the school.
No, I'm not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I live at 11774 Enyart Road.
Chad Lewis, I apologize.
Okay. You know, a lot of points have been brought to bear tonight by additional residents that I certainly agree 100% with. You know, we're talking about a 2-lane residential road that was never intended to bear the amount of traffic that it receives, not solely related to Symmes Elementary, but just the greater community. Enyart Road's become a very oft used thoroughfare for all the development of neighborhoods that's happened in the Symmes Township and Loveland area. And the idea of bringing more vehicles every day, multiple times a day, has me very concerned. When we're talking about a pre-K and K expansion, I don't see that as more bus traffic. My experience has been that many of those age children are driven by cars, distracted parents, you know, more so than bus drivers that are, you know, equipped and trained to transport children. The idea of expanding Enyart Road, you know, that since that's been brought up, I interpret that as a plan that an expansion of Enyart to the east of the school is something that I view as a part of this plan. You know, for my residents, I have most concern around you know, the attractive nuisance of a larger parking lot, a congregating spot for people other than just school users, and the associated light and the light pollution that's going to be brought. I heard Mr. Janigan comment, or one of the people from SHP about that, and the young children that use the field. Those athletes that are using those fields are 10 to 12 years old through the GSSA. You know, those are very large soccer fields, and that's a large piece of property that Symmes Elementary sits on. And it seems like there's a much better use to the north to put a large warehouse looking building. I guess I'd really like to know what's the proposed construction schedule for this build out?
I'll add the applicant back.
I can respond to the construction schedule. The plan is to start early site work in October. Foundations in November. Structure starts to come up December, January, February. Building enclosed, windows go in spring. And then a large bulk of the work will happen over next summer, renovating the existing building and then wrapping it up into the fall. I believe November, December 2021 is the exact time frame of being complete. It's about 14 months.
Or for such a residential area, it just seems a poor use of residential space relative to the rest of the Sycamore schools all being on multi-lane roads compared to a north and southbound Enyart road with no berm, so to speak. The sidewalk from Montgomery Road ends at the school. Is there any plan to extend that sidewalk further in this proposal?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
The sidewalk right now would lead to the bus drop off, which is the northernmost portion, and then there would be a sidewalk on the northern portion of the bus lot so kids could walk and not cross traffic. And then there's a hatch crossing area to get into the main entry.
Recognize it's been shared tonight that the plans include an addition of 17 parking spaces, which seems minimal. What I also hear, though, is that the actual dimensions of the paved area are going to increase quite substantially. There's going to be larger surface areas, more busing areas, certainly flow of traffic and ease of moving students and all that's going to be in consideration. If I look at the SHP document that received in the mail, it looks like maybe it's just not a good representation, but it looks like the area to the north of the pre-K K addition out to Enyart Road is one large paved area. And that has concern given the discussion of increasing lighting and lighting of a higher nature and what type of light pollution that's going to do to all of the surrounding neighbors.
Am I muted? Yeah, there, I'm on. The package has a light photometric plan that shows 20-foot lights, poles, and we will not emit more than 0.5 foot candles at the property lines. So our proposal is within the Symmes Township requirements. I wanted to address the soccer field size, and maybe I should have given you some dimensions. When I refer to it as a little field, it's 215 feet by 125 feet. And so that's well beyond the size needed for, I'm looking at age 9 to 10 play on 90 by 120. So it's a large field, will still be there.
Will the fields be between Enyart Road and the new paved area, or would the fields be contained within the school structure and the new paved area? And that would be those fields south of the entrances.
Yes, there's one south of the car entrance, and there's another field south of the bus entrance, and then there's another field north of the bus entrance. So, and zoning doesn't qualify fields, by the way. We're talking, for here we're talking about playgrounds,
sure,
lights.
Absolutely. Just viewing that as a consideration of of the surrounding aesthetics of my property, of all my neighbors, and this really impacting the property value of school district residents other than Sycamore.
well, this is a $12 million investment, and I think when anybody in any place I've ever worked, folks who are looking for houses who have young kids, go look at the schools. Let's go look at the house. Let's go look at the schools, and seeing this investment will bring Symmes and the site and the building up to modern standards. And the goal is that they won't have to do much to this building for many years beyond, 20 years.
Yeah,
beyond.
Mr. Janigan, I would apologize, but everyone who spoke tonight is not a Sycamore Community School resident. We all homes are in, even though we border Symmes, we're not Sycamore Community School residents.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Blair. I see Chad Lewis's hand raised or not. Okay. I believe we've heard from everyone who wanted to speak. We've heard both for the variance and conditional use, as well as against. This time we're going to close the floor
There is
for session.
I'm not sure if we've heard from Mr. Kane before.
Yeah, we talked to Kane.
Okay. He has his hand raised again. I don't know if you want to let him speak or move on.
Okay. We'll give Mr. Kane a couple of quick minutes. Mr. Kane.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for taking me for a second time. I just wanted to point out, I did hear several times through the conversation about the roof finish and about how there was an existing membrane roof on the current structure. I think as was shown in the Google satellite picture several times, that is currently limited to the gym, which is at a higher elevation and is not visible from either the street or from people's residencies. So I just wanted to make that that point for the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kane.
Okay.
Okay, at this time, the floor is closed. The board is going to discuss. Byron, I believe you're still with us. It looks that way. Who would like to start? There's a lot here.
Let me take a cut. I mean, kind of get the ball rolling here. I think it's a great project. I'm aligned with the project, and I would just really encourage Mr. Yaniger and his team to deliver ahead of schedule, under cost, and do it safely. I think it's a real asset for the community. However, I had a number of concerns, but let me just come down to the salient concern that I have. And to that point, I might think about, a conditional approval on this and not approve until they come back with sufficient detail. Number one is just to make sure that we have the update that includes the plans for the playground. Okay, I heard that sounds like it does, and maybe it doesn't, but I think for the people that are on that Pine Knob Road, that they ought to have the most accurate and up-to-date data to understand exactly what's the layout. Given that, what I would say is around the lighting, I agree. I think I'd rather have fewer poles and have them 20 feet than have more poles at 15. So I'm okay with that. For the streetscape, I looked at the Google Maps. You got a tree here, a tree there. Given that we're going to have a parking lot and buses and activities, I think as being a good neighbor, I would suggest that the construction team consider enhancing the streetscape Okay, I'm not necessarily saying it's got to be a wall of pines, but I think we ought to be doing something to help with the view from the neighbors who are on the west side of Enyart to make it a little bit more palatable in terms of what you're looking at when you start bringing this building closer to Enyart. Right now, you've got two big soccer fields between the road and the building. Now you're going to be bringing this building so much closer to Enyart. Let's put some nice streetscape along Enyart on the west side of the property. But the biggest concern I have is on the south boundary. And I think it's really fair that with the request that the people have is that the result of this expansion doesn't decrease the quality of life and the property values. And I'm really looking at two things. One is the visual appeal of the project and the sound management. And so to that point, what I would be saying is I'd be looking personally, and the board can agree or disagree with me, but to have some kind of follow-up that says, okay, here's really the plan. Here's where the playground's going to go. Here's where we're going to take out landscaping. But more importantly, here's what we're going to do for the neighbors on our south side to address the visual and the noise with landscaping, with privacy fencing, whatever it is, to ensure that there's no detriment to that neighborhood. So that's my point of view.
Okay. Ralph?
What was that?
Ralph, you're up.
Okay. Oh, I'm up. Okay. Can you hear me for some reason? Okay. I agree with Jack. The only thing that bothered me out of everything I've been hearing is that the school district, I don't think ever approached any of the neighbors to discuss what was going on. And even though the aesthetics of the building blends in, I do have a problem with the heights of the building, and the roof lines, but that's aesthetics, and that's not before this board. The board we are on the zoning board, and we have to deal with the zoning issues. And at this point, I agree with Jack. I'm okay with it. I think they just have to. One of the things I'm concerned about is the traffic that may come about, and keeping the play fields closer to the street as opposed to the parking lot, so that becomes part of a buffer to the to what's going on Enyart, as well as what they're actually going to do along the buffer against the residential areas. Let's see what else. And I did just to debate, I guess, Mr. Blair. He said that most of the schools that Sycamore has are on multi-lane roads, and they're really not. Most of them are on two-lane streets. They may come off of multi-lane roads, but they are actually on two-lane streets, except for Montgomery Elementary. So that differs. I mean, Sycamore High School is on two-lane street. Junior high is on a two-lane street. I can keep on going. Green is on a two-lane street, so I can keep on going. It's the same thing. But I do concern myself. It's a very busy corner. Most of the schools are further back from a busy corner, and I think once they meet with the highway and develop the way the buses will be turning in and out, I'm okay with that, and I'm all for. We need to keep a landscaping buffer zone, and it could gradually go from low to high, to so sort of visual impact of the buses and the cars turning in and out would help them and so on. So I may have been winded, but I've been there and done that. And and I'm all for the poles at 20 feet with a 0.45 foot candle cutoff, because most of the people are going to have a problem, because when they look at the lights, no matter what, when there are pole lights, you see the pole light and not at the property line, and took a foot candle reading at that line. That's where the differences are. They'll see this light and they think there's not going to be any light coming down at that. It'll just stop there. And it really doesn't stop at the property line. It just goes and goes and goes, because light travels for a long distance. But actually, if you put a light meter at the end of the property line, it would give you a point candle reading. If not, the lights have to be adjusted. So from the neighbor standpoint, we have to be diligent, and Sycamore has to be diligent as well on making sure it's done correctly. So as I got a little winded, sorry, but that's my feelings, and I'm agreeing with Jack, so I'm all for it with some caveats.
Darcy? Nope. Still no sound. Okay, just checking, just in case it changed. I agree. I'm pretty much on board with both of you guys. I'm okay with the lighting. My issue is with the neighbors, and just really making sure that is considered along that property line, as well as across from Enyart, to shield them from some of the view. That's a pretty open view as you're driving there. And that could be a lot if you're not used to that, and now there's going to be a lot more going on. And certainly being sensitive to the property owners that aren't even in that school district. And I think that maybe took some people by surprise, but yes, it's definitely a different school district there. So I think our choices, oh, good. Brian, you got here just in time.
Perfect.
Jack's idea was to have them come back with a more definitive plan with the landscaping along the south side. Am I saying that correctly?
Well, I'll make the proposal when we get to that. I'll enumerate it.
Okay. I didn't know if that was something that we needed to issue a continuance on, or
well, you always have that option. You can continue it and ask them to come back with more definitive plans for the playground area, or if you want to require something specific, like a 6-foot privacy fence or something like that, you can move forward with conditions. It's up to the board.
Okay. Well, let Mr. Yanigan, are you there?
The applicant?
Yeah.
He is back.
Just ask a question.
Yeah, I'm here, and
where are you in the timeline on this? Is this a gate in your milestone, or is the request to come back a reasonable request from your project timeline?
Receiving zoning is critical in the month of September, because I need to go in for a permit for foundations next week. I am willing to discuss some things today, or if we want to sidebar the playground in that south area, I'm texting with the district. We will consider privacy slats, evergreens along that side. I actually have a playground plan that we just produced a couple weeks ago that was before the submittal date. So if we could do something for just an initial approval of zoning and come back with some of those things on the south side. The other thing is just information. The average, we're required to have 10 feet of vegetation at the property line, and it looks like the thinnest we're going to get is 18, which is what it is today. But on average, it's about 50 or 60 feet. That includes the stuff we're going to take out. So if we also need to put in some 6, 8 evergreens along that playground, we'd be more than happy to do that.
That's what I would like for you guys to come back. You've heard the concern, okay? Yep. You have the details, you understand. What I wanted to do, I want this project to be a good neighbor, okay? So you can come back and say, okay, we've heard it. This is what we're gonna propose. Maybe it is a privacy fence. Maybe it is a couple of trees on the south side. We're gonna do some things on the streetscape, and this is what we can do. And I think that is really what we're looking for here is a compromise.
Sure.
And we don't want to stop your timeline.
Okay, I greatly appreciate that, and we're very grateful of you working with our timelines. So, Brian, how logistically how can that work so we can submit for a foundation permit?
It can't. So, if the board continues the case, you won't be able to get a permit until after the next month. Even trying to get a permit next week is going to be difficult because, following this meeting, the secretary has to put together the resolution, which has to be approved by the chairman, and that sometimes takes a week. And you won't be able to get permits until that is done. But if the board continues it, the whole case is continued. The only other option, aside from the board enumerating what they want, like a 6-foot privacy fence on the south side of the playground with 6 to 8 evergreen trees along the south side of the fence. And that's a very specific thing that we can look for on a set of plans.
Yeah, and that's an accommodation we could make. And also, I didn't address the streetscape. We're willing to do what we need to do to satisfy the streetscape requirements. And then finally on lights, the district has worked with folks to put in light shields or other things if hotspots are seen with lights. So these are all, this district has done a lot of development throughout the years, and they're very common things that they've addressed.
Yep.
And
I have a request from the district to speak to these details. So if you could unmute Chad and Frank.
Chad Lewis.
Yeah.
And who?
Frank Forstoffel. And I have a plan. The playground is about 130 feet at that property line. So 8 trees would when they're mature would be sufficient screening, and then also a 6-foot fence with privacy slats would satisfy, I think, the neighbors for visual and acoustics.
And I appreciate the board's consideration and, listening to the neighbors. We also want to be good neighbors. And, I would ask, just so that we can continue on our path of trying to get our process completed, that you consider, and we're willing to agree to make those conditions today, so you are able to proceed with your process. Because coming back at a later date would obviously delay our process, and I don't think I've heard anything that we couldn't agree to help out the neighbors with their screening issues. But I do appreciate Mr. Janigan pointing out we're well above the screening that's required, but if it's some additional screening that will help people with their comfort level, we're all for it.
Yeah, and as superintendent, I absolutely would concur with that. We'll do everything we need to do based on the concerns we heard tonight to be amenable to the neighbors.
Brian, how do we capture this?
So you're familiar with approval with conditions. The conditions just would need to be something that is enforceable. So the 2 issues that you brought up, the streetscape buffer, there is a streetscape buffer requirement in the zoning code currently. And it has a list of trees and shrubs per 100 feet. So that's something, if you just require that a streetscape buffer be provided along Enyart Road, that's easy. And then there would need to be a variance granted for 20-foot light poles where 15 feet is required. And the playground, you would specify the height and type of fencing, so 6-foot privacy. And then if you wanted additional landscaping, you would need to describe that. 8 evergreen trees works. There's a list of evergreens in the code that they can choose from. And they have a landscape architect so they can get whatever trees they want, really, as long as they're as mature evergreen tree types, not bushes. So if you were to say, if you were to approve it with the requirement that they provide a streetscape buffer, that the landscape plan be updated, to provide the streetscape buffer, that the playground include a 6-foot privacy fence with 8 evergreen trees planted. I would think on the south side of the privacy fence between the fence and the neighbors, then I think that would capture everything.
Let me just say, put a range on those trees, 8 to 10. Let the landscape architect. I don't think we're architect savvy enough to be able to say it's 8.
Well,
give it a range.
Is what we would suggest. What I would recommend you say be a minimum of 8. They can put
Yeah.
as much as they want.
Okay. Yeah. And let the architect figure that out.
Right. We're not going to tell them that 20 trees isn't good because you said 8.
Right. Okay. Does that make sense, Jennifer? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mr. Yonigan, does that make sense to you?
I don't think. Oh, I am muted. Yes, that makes complete sense. And then I did dig up a piece of information from one of our estimates. This current job has $100,000 of landscaping going in. It's 149 trees at $500 a piece. That's $75,000 in trees, and then 80 shrubs at $350 a piece for $27,000. So right now the budget has $100,000 in landscaping going in, and we can figure it out with our current plan or add more. It should not be an issue to add these items.
And throw a fence in there.
Yeah. We're going to fence in the playground anyway. So it's a matter of really just raising it to 6 feet on that side and adding the privacy slats. And then as I mentioned, it does have a poured rubber surface and that does help absorb sound.
It does.
The kind of bouncy surface that we've seen.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Just to clarify before you go, that's a 6-foot chain link fence with privacy slats is what you're proposing.
Yes, 6 foot tall privacy fence.
Different than a wooden or vinyl privacy fence. That's a chain link fence with privacy slats. Just the board would need to say that rather than privacy fence. Otherwise, we'd be looking for a solid board fence.
Chain link is more durable, that lasts longer. We do not put many wood fences or vinyl fences in districts because they don't survive more than a year.
And you got maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like we have a consensus here. Who would like to make a motion?
Do what we just said.
There we go.
I gotta go get my pajamas on. Anyways, Brian, can you
I'll let Jack write it.
Can you summarize that for us?
Sure.
You have all the good technical words and.
No problem. So the first thing that it sounds like the board wants to do is to grant a 20-foot where 15 foot is required for the light poles.
Right.
So that'll be a condition. There'd be a condition that they submit a landscape plan. I'm sorry, let me start over. It'd be a condition that they submit a lighting plan with the variance for 20-foot poles where required, but that the light levels need to meet the requirements of the code.
Right.
That's one. Submit a light or a landscaping plan that includes the streetscape buffer along Enyart Road and an additional 8 evergreen trees along the south side of the playground. The south side of the playground. And condition, say that again?
Minimum of 8.
Oh, minimum. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Minimum of 8. Got it. And then the condition that there be a 6-foot fence on the south side of the playground, of the southern playground, to include privacy slats. I think that's everything.
So Jack, is your motion to approve?
Yeah, my motion would be to approve with all those nice little caveats sufficiently detailed and captured.
That would be the 3 conditions that we just discussed.
Yes, sir.
And I'll second that.
All right, good.
Ready?
Off to Luann.
Mr. Fowler?
He dropped off.
He dropped off, okay. Ms. Harlow?
Yes,
Mr. Havel?
he's giving a thumbs up.
Mr. Horvath?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
All right, BZA number 2020-10, 11820 Enyart Road for Symmes Elementary is passed with conditions. Thank you for coming. We have some housekeeping to clear up here. You guys are welcome. If you are an attendee, you are welcome to leave at any time. I think our next order is old business, which is appeal of BZA 2020-07.
Yeah, that's the one with the fireplace.
Okay, so they're appealing.
They're appealing it, yeah. So I had to provide all the records. So we have to approve the minutes tonight because that'll be part of it. That'll also be part of it, so.
Okay.
And if you guys want to see the letter, I can scan it and send you a copy.
Yeah, that'd be nice, just for our records.
Sure.
Was it a
It was
test
just,
letter?
I had our administrator look at it and she said it's just standard. That
Oh,
nothing
okay.
particular was mentioned.
Okay.
But I'll scan it to you and Brian.
Yes, I would like to see it just to see if my name came up.
Your name's all over it.
Probably. Probably, because I talk the most.
While you're doing that, hey, whatever happened to our little treehouse situation? Has that thing been resolved?
Took it down.
They have to take it down.
Yeah.
They
did?
Took it down. Yeah, finally.
Wow.
They're getting fined. I know that. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Brian is a very powerful man. Don't mess with Brian.
That's right.
That wasn't me. That was Emily Whitty, our zoning inspector. She handled that whole thing.
Yeah, but we put her on part of your team, so we give you the credit.
Okay, so I don't know. Do we have a case for next month, Brian?
Yes, we have several.
We have several?
I like to hear that word several.
I believe there's 3. Actually, I take that back. I apologize. I'm sorry. That's the county BZA. There's 3 cases for the county BZA. I don't believe we have a case, do we, Luann? I haven't sent you anything, have I?
I haven't seen anything, but I'll email you guys, let you know.
Yeah, I don't think we do though. Nothing came in today.
Well, based on the duration of tonight's meeting, I think we ought to get paid for a September and October meeting.
Right.
And November.
Oh, Brian, speaking of that appeal, BZA 2020-07, I realized in my resolution, I gave it case number 2020-09. So they're referring to everything as that case number.
Okay.
That make a difference?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a clerical error. It's not. They're not going to use that to throw the case out.
The minutes reflect 2020-07. It just, the resolution was wrong for some reason.
Yeah. No, it should be fine.
Okay.
Whatever happens with that, I wasn't at that meeting. I didn't present that case, so I have nothing to do with it. I'm not getting named in the lawsuit.
Is that plan deniability?
Wow.
Did he get out of that one real quick?
Good.
I'll tell you, those people better be careful because I think that neighborhood might do what, learn something from Portland and burn that house down. If they, those people were testy.
I was really sorry to miss that meeting.
Oh, I don't know.
I picked the perfect time to go on vacation. It was perfect.
I'm on a meeting.
Okay, you have
Wonderful. Go ahead.
the minutes from the August 3rd meeting.
Yes, approval of minutes from August 3rd, 2020 meeting. Do we,
They look right. I move that we approve.
okay.
Second,
Well, Darcy beat you on the second. He got his fingers up there.
I seconded too, so I thirded it.
I'll fourth it.
Okay.
And the last thing is, okay, if we have a case in October, November, what do you want to do? You want to continue with Zoom, or do you want to have it at the safety center where we could spread out?
Hey, Luann, those are the minutes that include the lawsuit case, right?
Yes.
So that was moved and seconded. You might want to call the roll on that.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fowler, he's gone, right? Ms. Harlow,
Yes.
Mr. Havel,
Thumbs up.
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes,
Okay.
there, how's that?
I guess when the governor signed that you can have public meetings on Zoom, that ends in December. So we have to decide how we want to handle the rest of the cases for October and November. Do you want to continue to do Zoom? Or do you want to do it at the safety center where we could spread out?
I'd rather do Zoom.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Florida, so I need to do Zoom. If
Okay,
you want me to be a part of it.
all right. All right, Zoom it is. Okay, but December, if we have a case, we have to go back to the.
So far.
Unless there's a new order.
The order, I don't know.
Depends on who wins that election.
Isn't
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
through
I think
December? Isn't it actually through December?
I don't know, that's what Kim told me.
I think it's through December, so it
The
really would be
trustees are
till
going
January.
back to regular meetings. Trustees are done with Zoom, so
We're just getting the hang of it.
I know.
Hey,
That actually went very smoothly tonight.
I just noted, Ralph, you gotta fix your clock though. It says midnight on it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the deal with the clock, because I kept waiting for it to
You're making me
move, the hands to move
oh,
or
that
something.
clock, it's only right twice a day.
Yeah, that's right. The same time as 4 hours ago.
Yep, it hasn't changed.
So get it fixed for next month, okay?
No, you won't see it next month. I have a wall unit going there,
Okay.
the bookshelves.
Okay, that's all I have.
Wonderful.
Great meeting, Jennifer. Really
Good
enjoyed it.
meeting, good meeting.
Good meeting, guys.
So, Jen, I move that we end the meeting.
I second.
Okay, I'll send you all the stuff.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yes.
There we go.
Thumbs
Have
up.
a good night, everybody.
Yep. Adios.
Thanks.